Guys, we just got so much info on Cyberpunk 2077, and I wanted to share it with all of you, from the final Night City wire to several press previews from people who have played the game for 16 hours each. Details on Johnny Silverhand, on the score and soundtrack, the impressive lip sync technology that might be the new standard for open world games like this. There is just so much to cover, so I wanted to share everything while also giving you my thoughts on everything that we saw. And just from the top level, this has gotten me more hyped than anything we've seen so far from Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red. Let's start with Night City Wire. There's a lot of kind of fluff information in these shows, and I think it's for, I would consider, like, super fans of the game that really care about every single minute detail. But I'm gonna try to condense this into, a little more digestible information for you guys. First off, this was the previous release date for Cyberpunk. Of course, they didn't mention that, but the game was supposed to come out on November 19th. Before they had to delay it for hopefully the final time until December 10th. But they confirmed that this was the final episode of Night City Wire, so the fact that they came out and said that made me a little more easy about December 10th being the final release date. The focus of most of this one was on Johnny Silverhand and Keanu Reeves, and I think the trailer that they played towards the beginning gave me the clearest picture of Johnny and his impact on V and what we're going to be playing. We see sequences even of us reliving Johnny Silverhand's memories, which I don't think we knew about before. Could be wrong there. But yeah, V is trying to get rid of Johnny Silverhand, or at least there's a version of V that does not want him in his head, or her head. From the interview with Keanu Reeves, we learn a lot more about Johnny, how he's more of a co-protagonist than just a character, like a sidekick in the story. V and Johnny both have different agendas, and they can work towards each other or work away from each other. And that's really up to us as the player to decide which path we take. Some of the things you do in this game will be expressly for you, the character V, but also some will be for Johnny. Both of these characters have a continued existence, and that's super important to the narrative. And personally, in these games, I love when characters beyond the playable character, beyond V in this case, have an impact on the world. Their choices matter, and we get that with Johnny. Now, there was a whole section about the score and soundtrack. That is not my expertise, really, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. But what stood out to me is that every single quest in Cyberpunk 2077 was scored, every individual one. And there are specific actions and decisions made within those quests that have their own specific scoring just for that decision. So that level of detail is something that gets me extremely excited. The fact that they took the time to do that, and the fact that there are different sounds in different areas of Night City. So being in Pacifica is going to be a lot different than the Badlands or Haywood. So these places are going to feel different, they're going to look different, but they're also going to sound different, which is very, very, very important for an open world, at least in my book. And then on the soundtrack, just this, statistic, 150 custom tracks were made for Cyberpunk 2077. That is just absolutely unheard of at this scale. We're gonna hear them on the radio or in the background, maybe in some story beats. Just that scale blows my mind. There's also going to be a mode which will disable copyright tracks, and this is a very specific thing. Not everyone's a content creator or a streamer, but it is cool to see that, especially with all of the weird Twitch stuff going on right now. Now, I'm usually not into behind the scenes stuff that doesn't really impact gameplay, but this lip sync software, the Jolly tech that they're using, which automatically generates based on voices and scripts, no matter the language that you're using, looked so impressive that, like I said at the top of the video, I think it's going to revolutionize what we see from these open world games. When you have hundreds upon hundreds of characters needing, to have accurate lip sync and in different languages, guys, this is the future. And this is behind every single character. So I'm hoping this gives us a really good baseline. We don't have that one character that just has horrible lip sync. They also showed off the fact that they can toggle between a character mumbling a line and how that changes the lip sync versus shouting the line. And the difference is insane. So I'm just really excited to see that in action and just go out and talk to as many people as I possibly can in the game. And then finally, they showed off some digital rewards that you can claim for in-game items, like some Witcher jackets for connecting to GOG, there's some Gwent stuff. Nothing I want to get too specific into, but this is available on every platform, not just PC. All of this stuff was awesome, but oh my gosh, they saved the best for last. This gameplay trailer at the end of Night City Wire, like, it's a very general trailer, so I think it's made for people who have never seen Cyberpunk or just don't have that in-depth knowledge that a lot of us might have. But this was the most well-rounded, I feel like, trailer that contextualizes what kind of game Cyberpunk is, what you're going to be doing, and how expansive the world will be. So we get a background on the state of the world, what's going on. There's an economic crisis leading to a nuclear conflict, and the result is that most of America is just lawless. You know, there's violence everywhere, and people, as a result, flocked to Night City, which was already overcrowded and had its own issues. Then we learn more about Night City. It's one of the few megalopolises left in America, and it's just a power struggle between many different varying factions, and it just so happens that V is the perfect solution for a lot of these factions. They're an outsider, they're someone who is a gun for hire, a mercenary that can take care of problems and isn't too close and personal with anyone, at least at the start. Then they dived into customization options like cyberware, abilities, and guns, and dropped the fact that we have hundreds of options across all of these, and in any open world RPG, that is just so important. You need that quantity, but you also want the quality. We got a really in-depth look at the new cyberware menu. So on the left side, you have slots for all these different systems: your frontal cortex, your ocular, circulatory, immune, nervous, integumentary. Of course, I totally don't know what that is. Google tells me that is an organ system consisting of your skin, your nails, and stuff like that. The point is that this is very cyberpunk, that you can just go in and get mods to, you know, go to a Ripper doc and change all of this. And on the right side, we have an operating system. This affects your hacking, like your quick hack ability, lots of different things. We have a specific example of one of those items in slot. Then you have your skeleton, your hands, arms, and legs. We have a specific example for a skeleton piece. Titanium bones increases your carry capacity. There's just so much going on here, and I'm really excited to like dive in deep and see what is best and how many options there truly are. We also got the most updated look at the character menu, which before I thought it looked very cluttered. This looks much better. It's divided into the 5 attributes in the game. You've got body, reflexes, technical ability, intelligence, and cool. And just for reference, it looks like the max level for this stuff is 20. And similar to a game like Fallout, if you dump your attribute points into these categories, they will boost, you know, specific things based on that category. So for example, the technical category was highlighted. This affects your crafting, your tech weapons, damage against drones, mechs, and robots. It boosts your armor and gives you unique dialogue options. But it also dictates crafting and engineering perks. We also got to see reflexes highlighted. So when you put points into reflexes, this affects your evasion, your chance to avoid attacks, critical chances, attack speed and movement, precision weapons, and even your overall experience gain. And for this one, we got to see the perks more up close. So in the reflexes category, this dictates your handguns, blades, and rifles categories. Inside each of these perks is a group of other minor perks you can grab that give you very specific boosts to things like your rifle damage while aiming, or increased armor while you're moving. So this game, it just approaches skills and abilities from a very granular level. Like if you want a very specific play style, you can go for it. Now this trailer does have some very specific story bits that you might not want to hear, so I'm just kind of going to generally talk about it. We get more of a basic breakdown of what happens in the game. V steals a biochip, and through the course of the events of that mission, we suddenly have Johnny Silverhand. The digital soul of him is inhabiting our brain, and he has his own motivations that we'll have to deal with. But this biochip that we come across is highly coveted, so that is how we kind of elevate to stardom within Night City. Towards the end of this trailer, we got a great look at the inventory screen, which, guys, this thing has changed a million times, and again, I think this is the cleanest version that we've seen. There are 3 weapon slots on the left. You've got your general stats, your armor, your health, stuff like that. But then on the right, you have all these visual customizations, and it looks like there are an insane amount of options. They just flash this inventory screen, and there are multiple slots for these pieces. So I can't even imagine just the sheer number of combinations that we'll be able to come up with. One final thing in the gameplay trailer, it looked like there are a lot of fun ambient activities, but the one I wanted to highlight is riding a roller coaster. So apparently with V, if you want to blow off some steam and spend some of that money you get from your missions, you can go and ride a roller coaster, because of course you can. So to kind of put a cap on Night City Wire, I thought this was one of the best ones that CD Projekt had, and it's interesting because this is after the game got delayed and has had, so many controversies, one after the other, and it was great to see the game in a better place, and I really hope that we are going to finally play the game on December 10th. It's time to dive into these previews. So I actually selected two. I'm sure there are more out there, but first I wanted to start with IGN's preview from Tom Marks. Now this one has no spoilers. There are some things that you might consider spoilery, but I will censor them. If you want to check out this preview for yourself, link in the description below. So Tom got to play 16 hours of the game, which is, again, unheard of from any preview. Like the most I've been able to play is 6 hours, and that was for Valhalla. But for Tom, it took him 6 hours to reach the title card. So that kind of gives you an idea of the breadth of the prologue. Like this is a very lengthy prologue. Tom started from the very beginning, and he chose the Corpo life path, one of 3 life paths. He decided to go with that one. Some of Tom's general impressions were that this is just a dense, packed world. There's so much going on. There's so many decisions, choices, mechanics. And because of that, he said it felt like a slow burn. And that was a little bit surprising because there's so much to kind of inform the player about. And that he only really understood the pace and the structure of this game by the end of his play session. So to me, that signals that, yeah, there's just so much going on that it might take a while for us to adjust to what Cyberpunk is trying to deliver, which is totally fine with me. I am okay with a slow burn. Another game with a slow burn, I thought at least from the beginning, was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I think it takes a while for that game to pick up steam. But yeah, within this first section, there's a lot of tutorializing. It's kind of preparing you for the rest of the world, and not until the end of the prologue was Tom hooked. And that's okay with me. It really reminds me of The Witcher 3 as well. That game took me a while to get hooked to, but once it did, it had its hooks in me, and I was just ready for the rest of it. After that prologue, though, Tom said that Night City opens with no restrictions. You have a very specific motivation and some leads to go off of, but at that point, you're just let off the leash. You're able to explore as you please. Now, there's some really good details about side quests in this preview. I suggest you guys read it verbatim, but my general takeaway is that these can be very long or very short, which I like personally, a variety of the two, and they lead you either across multiple regions or just self-contained within one. And these side missions can be full of conflict and combat, or they don't have to be. They can be slower paced, and some of them can be lighthearted and silly, while others can be more heavy and personal. I think most of all, when you talk about a game that you're going to be playing for hundreds and hundreds of hours, variety is very important, but also quality, not quantity. So I really hope that Cyberpunk takes into account that people will be playing this game for a very long time. He also describes some side activities like boxing or finding special murals. Not a lot of information there, but you need those side activities to kind of give us a break from all of the tasks that we're doing. Now, there is a healthy amount of criticism in this preview, namely around bugs. And Tom said, in fact, that he's glad that the game was delayed because it just isn't ready. There are a lot of things that need to be cleaned up, and that's what this time is for. And from what I know about preview builds, this thing was finalized probably a month ago. So where the game is right now internally is probably better than what they're playing. But he also said, and this is the one thing that worries me, is that quest management is really rough. The quest log is, quote, a busy mess. There are no reward indicators for quests, so you don't know to go after a specific reward for a quest, which doesn't really bother me, but he gave some good reasons as to why it bothered him. He also said there's no difficulty indicator for quests beyond vague words like danger or moderate or very high, which again, I think you can kind of interpret what that means. I kind of, I lean towards the AC Valhalla way of doing things. That's probably some recency bias from me, but I like when a game doesn't necessarily tell me exactly what to expect because that's not realistic. But I haven't played the game for myself, and hopefully they rein this stuff in with some, UI updates and polishing before launch. We got some more details on Night City as a whole, just solidifying what we already knew. that it's gorgeous, and that just hopping in your car and driving around is one of the coolest things that you can do in this world. Nothing, no game world has ever touched the scope or style, like the rich detail and verticality and scale that Night City has, which just gets me so excited because, yeah, we have not had a legitimate, cyberpunk themed genre game quite like this on an open world scale. So this is one of the things that gets me most excited. One very interesting note is that he said fast travel felt like a negative, and it felt like he was missing out on a lot of things by using fast travel where he could have just driven a couple blocks to get to his destination. I love that. I always want to avoid fast travel unless I've completely explored a single part of the world. I want to take that world in for myself first, and that is something that I absolutely plan to do. When comparing Cyberpunk to games like Fallout 4 or The Witcher 3, those are the natural comparisons, he actually drew a contrast here and said that the way that combat is approached is very different because you're in a city, right? This is a living, breathing city. You can't just shoot up the entire place. I mean, you could, but you'll probably land in jail or dead. So he said it feels more like Grand Theft Auto, where you can go several hours without any combat. And sometimes you have to go looking for trouble, but that didn't make the game dull because what you were doing outside of combat was engaging, because once again, this is an RPG first. And he went on further to say that combat is actually probably a weak point. It's not bad, but it's, not a straight up FPS, which is something that I'm actually okay with. I know some people might kind of cringe at hearing that. He said enemies have a surprising amount of health and that they felt bullet spongy, more like Borderlands, I would say, from that comparison. And that led him to preferring more of a sneaky play style. There's not a ton of depth with the stealth, but using quick hacks to scout around was fun. And the description there kind of reminds me of the way that Watch Dogs Legion uses hacking to scout. He said that combat didn't really feel good until he got more abilities and settled on a specific build and play style with a rifle and a katana. So the depth in combat is more about the choices and the variety and the aesthetic and how flashy it looks, rather than how it feels. And again, that may be disappointing to some people. To me, it's really not, because I did see Cyberpunk as an RPG before an FPS. So that's it with the IGN preview. Now let's move on to the GameSpot preview from Phil Hornshaw. Once again, link in the description below. I highly recommend you guys read these for yourselves too. So Phil had a lot of spoilers in his preview, which is fine. You can do it that way or you can do it the other way. So I did try to kind of, dodge those, so I don't want to spoil the game for you guys. So Phil describes a narrative sequence that we've seen in previews before that involves 3 different factions and choosing different decisions, and he chose the ones that we had not seen before, and his choice drastically changed the outcome. And it made him enemies, like actual enemies with a faction, to the point where they warned him, like, we're coming for you. And after seeing the weight of his decision, he said that feeling of choice and branching narratives is what stood out most after his 16 hours with the game. He felt like he was leaving a mark on Night City, developing relationships and really charting their own unique path in this world. Phil describes a lot of his experiences with the brain dance sequences, which I'll admit was part of the game that was least exciting for me from what CD Projekt Red has showed, but he said that it felt like a nice change of pace from everything else you were doing, and it also adds that element of mystery, and you're going on an investigation to uncover the truth, and it feels like you're the one who's actually doing the fact-finding. But what I like about this preview is that Phil spent a long time talking about building relationships with side characters, and it really does feel like the weight of your decisions and how you treat people makes a difference. For example, with Judy, the BD operator, she's not just a small side character. Like, within her character arc, you can interact with her further and build a relationship based on your decisions and how you treat her. For example, after her mission, if you treat her well, she will start texting you and sending you messages and unlocking further story beats. But if you blow her off, you're not going to get any of those options. You have to actually make the effort with these characters. Same thing goes with another character that you meet in the Badlands region, a character named Panam who has connections to the Nomad clan. Again, another faction in the game. And without spoiling anything, there's a lot of details in this preview, but the outcome of that mission leads to a deeper relationship with that character and unlocked more side missions because of the choices that were made. Now, he did warn that there are tons of decisions and lots of times where you can pick one decision or the other in dialogue, and they lead to the same outcome, but choice is so central to this game that it makes the experience feel unique, like you're in the shoes of V making those choices. Another example of choice and impact, there's a main mission, which we're not going to talk about the details for, but it does involve two factions, and we've seen previews of it before, and we saw it go really the wrong way with one faction, but an okay way with the other one. This time, they managed to eke out a decision where both factions leave you in good standing. So you don't just piss off one faction and side with another. Like, there's a lot of variability in how these things turn out. The main takeaway with this preview for me was at the end of it, when Phil said that the best part of the game is feeling like a small part of a huge world. Which, yeah, that's something I love. I love feeling like a tiny cog, you know, in this huge world where, yeah, you're at the center of it. You know, V is a very important character, and so is Johnny, but you are just part of the world. You are not the world. Whew, so guys, that was a lot of information. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown impressions. Overall, this just got me so much more hyped for Cyberpunk. We're only 3 weeks away. I mean, this is the best representation I feel like I've seen so far for this game. And yeah, bring on December 10th. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss my next video. Hit the bell to turn on live notifications, and you won't miss what I have coming soon. Like I said at the top of the video, the lack of Cyberpunk content on my channel just doesn't reflect how I feel about this game. I'm absolutely insanely hyped, and I want to cover it more. So if you like this kind of video, let me know in the comments below, or if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. Be sure to follow me on social media. On Twitter, I'm at jayvee on YT, and Instagram, I'm at jayvee.yt. And if you want to talk Assassin's Creed Valhalla, any open world kind of games, or Cyberpunk specifically, I have a Discord community, a Discord server. It's discord.gg/jv on YT. A lot of great folks in there having great conversations, and all links for everything I've talked about are in the description below. Big thanks to my YouTube members, my Ultra fans, Grass, Dave, Deadwalker, Bill, Cam, Cullen, and Jacob. Super fans, Kamal, Casey, Tipsy Sergey, Dan, and Karen. My fans, Matthew, Spyro, JVO, John, Lilman, Brock, Tia, Level 42, Ryan, Allura, Ryan, Moonman, Tarl K, and Joe. And my supporters, Nos, Flame, Nightmare, Sung, Abhishek, V-Toxic, Taryn, Glenn, Elo Games, Undersittable, Adam, and Blaze for supporting the channel. If you want to support me further, click the join button below this video. In exchange for your support, you'll unlock custom badges and emotes to use in chat. Check the link in the description for more information. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.